Now, back to our lead story. As the president assents to the 10.6 trillion naira 2020 appropriation bill, bringing us to the January-December budget cycle, we take a look at the benefits of this feat. Well, how achievable is the implementation process, and what are the key highlights of the budget? We're now being joined by Dr. Emeka Okengwu, is an economist. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Good morning, and thank you. Well, it's afternoon now. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Now, the 2020 budget has been largely celebrated for its timeliness and the fact that it returns us to the January-December budget cycle. But that aside, economists say Nigeria's budgets are not always realistic, with the amounts disbursed each year often falling short of the projected spending. So what do you see when you look at this budget?
Well, I think you must allow me to also join in celebrating the euphoria of returning us back to what I call decorum. Okay, because what has happened is that it's been seen and shown that we can actually now, run whatever needs to be run on the budget proposals or budget appropriation if you have the executive and the legislature working, in harmony. This is what it means. So to that, I thank the legislature for, like the president has said, being able to bring us back onto the 12-month calendar period. There are two things about a budget that is very important for us to appreciate. Budgets are broken into two broad sectors, what you call your capital and what you call your recurrent. But in this 2020 Appropriation Act, and remember that most of the capital, the capital injection into your capital projects, most of them come from external borrowing. And then you now have this borrowing plan, that is tied to specific projects, already also, on the front burner of the National Assembly. I do think that we might be having a much more better run if the National Assembly will be kind to assent to that borrowing plan, because it's going to be helping government, to be able to now pursue its capital projects that already have been captured, but that's not part of this, particular appropriation bill, and it is project-based. The recurrent part of it usually doesn't have a lot of issues because it has to do with salaries, emolument, and then, little procurement here and there. So I think in implementation, everybody also now says that budgets are implemented based on revenue streams. What we should be looking at now is, how are we able to now ramp up our revenue streams? What will be those revenue, windows that we're looking at? And remember that, again, something very innovative has also happened, which is the production sharing bill or production sharing agreement has also been signed into law. And then, of course, you have the financial strategy paper. So there's a lot that's coming in that has never happened before. And I think it's all about now being able to now focus on making certain that we are able to do it the way it's been written down to be done. I think we'll get out of the woods.
Okay, I'd like to pause for a moment and take a look at where we're coming from. And I'm talking about the 2019 budget and, related to what we have now, the 2020 budget, sort of like a 2019 versus 2020 budget. And there you have it on the screen. You see the recurrent expenditure for the 2019 budget at 4.05, capital expenditure 2.09, statutory transfers at 502 billion, debt service 2.14. And when you come to the 2020 budget, you see recurrent expenditure at 4.8, capital expenditure 2.5, statutory transfers 560 billion, debt servicing 2.7 trillion naira. Now, the question is, when you compare the 2019 budget to the 2020 budget, would you say we have learned from the past and made some progress?
Yes, but you see, it's also important, and when you're making these comparisons, for you to recognize and respect that what you're looking at, what you have on your screens you've just shown, is a financial plan that you have cast in figures, okay? And this is where people talk about implementation. And you can't implement, those monies you see written there are not sitting in any vault or in any bank. They are based on revenue projections. They are based on, income coming into, government coffers. So the discipline of doing well or otherwise will basically be driven, by your revenue. So I think what we should have been investigating or interrogating will be what amounts of revenues the government gets against the 2019 budget, and then what are they expecting against the 2020 budget. And that's why I'm saying to you that some innovations have come into play. Government has brought a new borrowing plan, okay, that is going to be supporting infrastructure development, strictly on project-based agreements. Government has brought in the production sharing agreements, which is also going to be allowing a lot of more income into government coffers. Budgets fail or succeed not only because of implementation, but because of available revenue. That's the point I'm trying to make.
All right. Now, Dr. Okengu, I'd also like to find out, you said you joined in celebrating the euphoria of returning the country to a January-December budget cycle. So for Nigerians to understand, what exactly is the implication of this? Why are we celebrating the January-December budget cycle? What signal does it send to local and foreign interests? Can you break it down for us?
Yes, what signals it actually sends is that you can actually now have, what you call your quarter-based planning. And remember that, most of the projections we do on a quarterly basis. Okay, you usually have 3 quarters, in a fiscal year. So what this technically means now is that you actually now have, you can actually now interrogate what happens in each of these quarters. Okay, and again, remember that for each time you need to probably roll over the budget, you need to go and get another, appropriation bill and then get another approval from the National Assembly. You just don't roll over. So you find out that for each budget year, you now find out that, these appropriation bills are passed into law twice for you to be able to now roll over. And each time you roll, you usually don't know when you're going to start rolling. So I think what is key here is that we can actually now have what we call the quarterly investigations or quarterly reviews of our budgeting process. We can actually now say, okay, by the end of November, when you're supposed to be mopping up funds back into the national coffers, everybody would have been waiting for that November where you are able to now, prejudge, or you're able to oversight, or you're able to investigate what ministries, departments, and agencies, have done within this period. And come to think about it again, there's, this Open Governance Act or program that government has also now, approved, also gives a lot of impetus to this 2020 budget, because what that means is that with the open governance and a transparency portal now being open, you are able to follow, the money. You are able to follow every amount of money that exceeds 5 million, being spent in the public arena or being spent by MDAs. So I think it's for all of us as Nigerians to be able to first and foremost look at the 3 things that has happened. One is that we now have a budget that can start when every budget should start, which is January 1, and it's going to be ending, or folding over by the end of November, right, which is what usually happens. 2, you now have the transparency portal, which allows citizens to be part of who did what and what they did it for. Because what that means is that for every expenditure exceeding 5 million that you do coming from, the public coffers, you will need to upload it into that portal. So citizens can also be part of, what is happening. What that also means is that the income being generated can also now, be followed. It is a simply win-win situation, makes everybody inclusive, makes all of us, this is just including the citizenry, for once in a very long time,
Dr. Okengu,
into development and budgeting and government expenditure in the country.
I understand this is your forte and you can go on and on, but I'd like to thank you so much for shedding some light on some of the issues that have been raised. We've been speaking with Dr. Emeka Okengu. He's an economist and he joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you for your time.